Hi, I'm Joy Yoder. I'm a midwife at Ephrata Community Hospital through WellSpan in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. I'm doing a series of videos for the women who are part of my centering class as a way to kind of give them information during the COVID-19 social isolation. This conversation, I'm going to try to keep short and sweet, is regarding natural methods to prepare the uterus and the cervix for labor. I get there's a lot of ways that people want to prepare for labor and make it for quick and fast, easy labor. And so I'd like to talk about some different methods that I hear and sort of give information, but also give some guidance. So the methods that I'm thinking of are specifically evening primrose oil capsules, red raspberry leaf tea, 6 dates a day. These are things that are recommended sometimes to women to help soften their cervix and, quote, help the uterus have better tone or just get them ready for labor so that their labors are faster and quicker. And I think all of these methods cause some cramping and some contracting, and by doing so help to get that cervix softer, and so that when labor happens, that then that softening part doesn't take as long and that the labor can move along quickly. I'm going to talk about each one of these things and tell about how to use them and risks, benefits. But some general guidelines is no one should be doing anything to prepare themselves for labor prior to 37 weeks. 37 weeks is the cutoff mark for full-term babies, so they're considered full-term. Generally, we encourage people to stay pregnant until 40 weeks because the baby's brain needs that time to mature. Breastfeeding goes so much better at full term. Babies are much more able to regulate their temperature. They're much more ready to say, hey, I'm awake and I'm hungry around 40 weeks of gestation. And so certainly, unless there's a medical reason, inductions of labor, C-sections do not happen before 39 weeks. This is a whole other conversation I was not expecting to get into at this point. But we will have a video on induction of labor. So none of these methods should be tried prior to 37 weeks, so that if perchance they would spur things along, that you do not have a preterm delivery. If you are a preterm labor risk person, these are not methods that you should be doing. You should, hence, not doing them before 37 weeks. Okay, I'll try not to make this terribly boring. Let's start with red raspberry leaf tea. Red raspberry leaf tea is a tea that you can make and drink, and there's different guidelines, a couple cups a day, 1 cup a day. A lot of women do this as they feel they do so desire. In my experience, women who drink red raspberry leaf tea tend to cramp more, can tend to be somewhat uncomfortable, and contract some, and this sometimes can cause them worry, sometimes not. In the women that I see who use excessive amounts, who I'm talking like drink gallons a day, sometimes thinking that this will spur them into labor, those women I actually see more risk for postpartum hemorrhage. And so that's something to consider. So some use seems okay and safe. Excessive use, probably not a good idea. And again, is it beneficial? Does it help? If it does, it probably does in the sense of it causing the contractions and working on that cervix to kind of get it soft. And I think that's the best benefit that it gives. Evening primrose oil you can buy in capsules. You can, I think, even giant grocery store sells them. It's very interesting to me. They're in oil. Directions usually say to take them a couple times a day, and also place one vaginally at nighttime. When you place it vaginally, you want to prick a hole in it so the oil can escape. So use a pin to prick a hole in it and then place it vaginally. Again, don't start this prior to 37 weeks because I don't want you doing preterm labor. And again, I find that women tend to be crampier on evening primrose oil. And I think that's how it works. It kind of massages that cervix and kind of gets it softer. And in a first-time mom, there is some benefit to that. But if you're having trouble sleeping, if you're, because you're cramping so much and things are uncomfortable and you're miserable, this may not be a good idea because it's going, some women say, but I'm cramping so much I can't sleep. Stop taking evening primrose oil. You might still cramp a lot, but maybe not quite as severely. Don't add to the problem if that's a problem. The other one is the 6 dates a day. There actually is some research to this that supports the dates, like the medjool dates, like whole dates, chopped dates, the food dates that you have in a grocery store. You go and buy. Eat 6 whole dates a day, and that is supposed to help with cervical ripening and getting ready for labor. It is rather humorous to me that some of my home birth midwife friends say, oh, all our ladies take 6 dates a day, and we have no post-term inductions. They all deliver by 40 weeks, and everything's great. And I kind of chuckle because I work for a hospital that takes on a good number of their post-dates ladies and helps deliver their babies using induction methods. And I chuckle because there is some basis for this, but it is not a cure-all, end-all. They are high in sugar. They're also higher in fiber, and so honestly, put them in cookies, put them in breads, I don't know, use them, and really no harm done to these 6 dates a day. The same rules apply. If you're crampy and uncomfortable and miserable, maybe you don't need these. Like, maybe you're already working on that cervix anyway. Other things. So with the evening primrose oil and the red raspberry leaf, I think I mentioned the red raspberry leaf, the risk for bleeding. I have seen women try to use evening primrose oil as an induction method. So say they're 40 weeks and they just want to be done, or they're 39 weeks, and they think that by taking excessive amounts of evening primrose oil, they're going to cause their labor to be started up. They are incorrect. What they are correct in is that once they are in labor, they may very well have a risk for postpartum hemorrhage. And so I strongly discourage excessive use of either of these forms. I think within the directions is it gives you something to do. Does it help? Maybe, and it's worth, if it's not harming, it's worth doing if you're at your wit's end to know what you can do to try to make this go well for you. The other 2 methods that I'd like to talk about are things like castor oil. Many women will try to use castor oil, and some do so successfully to try to induce labor. Its uses are best in someone who's not having their first baby, so maybe their second or third or so on baby. So their cervix, usually by the time they're using it, is softer and more ready to respond to contractions. So in one case, I would say primate women, first-time moms, this is not an option I would run to. Certainly it is not to be done without being counseled by your healthcare provider to do so. It causes diarrhea and the release of prostaglandins and dehydration. And in that, then stimulation of contractions. And if the cervix is soft enough, hoping that those contractions will dilate you to a point where then your labor will just take on its own life, do its own laboring, and get that baby's head low enough and on the cervix enough to cause labor to go. It will make you poop and poop and poop and poop. And it will make you dehydrated. And it will make you contract. And sometimes it will make you contract so much that it can cause the baby to be in distress, or you don't know whether the baby's handling it well because you're at home and you're not observing the response of the baby to those contractions. If you have castor oil on a prime cervix that's firm and not ready to dilate and not dilated at all, you're going to pound away on your cervix, and it's going to be a hard, awful labor for you and the baby. We see increased risk of meconium with castor oil use. So the baby poops because it's in distress in the womb. There's poop in the fluid, and that could be all kinds of reasons. Oftentimes castor oil is used post-dates when babies poop anyway because they're big grown-up babies and they make poop. But it is not something that I recommend to be used without consulting your medical provider. It is also not generally something I would recommend in a first-time mom. And certainly not before 40 weeks of pregnancy. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have to say about castor oil. It's one of those things we can't control how your body responds to it. And in a lovely world, it would work wonderfully every time with no consequences. But that is not always the case, and this world is not always so lovely. And sometimes women are not laboring and post-dates for a reason, and it would be good to investigate why that is. The other piece is nipple stimulation. Nipple stimulation releases oxytocin and will cause uterine contractions. And so sometimes we use nipple stimulation to stimulate contractions in a woman who would like to try to avoid medicines. And again, I would look up on the internet like ways and methods to do this. I think there's multiple ways and descriptions of how to go about this. Basically involves rubbing your nipples until you have a contraction, and start getting contractions regularly. And again, the same applies. If you're doing this outside of healthcare observation, we and you don't know how baby's handling all of this. I certainly wouldn't do it before 40 weeks of pregnancy. Your cervix has to be ready. I think the biggest thing is your cervix needs to be ready for these contractions and needs to be soft. And oftentimes in a first-time mom, this is not enough to get your labor going in a way, because the cervix takes so much work to start to soften, to start to dilate, that this is not a recommendation I usually give for my first-time moms for induction of labor. I think induction of labor needs to be a completely different video, because I don't think that I can do that safely and coherently at this moment. Hopefully that's enough information. I do want to very much caution things like black and blue cohosh. And so there's some gentle birth methods, supplements that you can take. Be very conscious of what you're taking into your body. Herbs are powerful. They are really powerful. And we often don't know how they interact with each other, but sometimes we do know how they work. And two of those ingredients cause abruption, bleeding, hemorrhage as their methods of working. And so I would really avoid black and blue cohosh and generally any mixture concoctions that would cause contractions to happen. So use wisdom as you have access to many things out there. So, all right, those are my brief discussion on these things. I think some of them are wonderful and can really make a woman feel like she's doing the best she can to make her labor go well. Do I think they're necessary? Not always. And they have mixed benefits and risks. Thank you.